Part of regular maintenance on all fitness equipment is to make sure all the fasteners of the machine are tight. This includes parts that are both customer and factory assembled parts that may be under some of the plastic covers. One place that can make noise and make the motion of the pedals feel jerky if the fasteners are loose is where the crank arm is held onto the crank axle. This bolt should be tightened when regular maintenance is performed. Access the crank arm bolt by removing the side shield disc. Use a set of wrenches or a wrench and socket to tighten the crank arm bolt to eliminate any movement of the crank arm on the crank axle. There is a crank arm anti-rotation key that holds the crank arm in the proper orientation on the axle. If the crank arm comes loose, it can cause this key to take on wear and tear. If the key gets worn out, then you may not be able to keep the crank arm from moving on the axle when tightening the crank arm bolt. To replace a worn-out key, you will need to remove the crank arm from the crank axle. First, remove any plastic covers from the elliptical joints. It may be useful to refer to your assembly instructions during the disassembly and reassembly process. Remove the linkage hardware that holds the upper body led to the roller arm. Then remove the pedal leg from the crank arm. Carefully remove the pedal leg and roller arm assembly from the crank arm. Then unscrew and remove the crank axle bolt and washer. You can then loosen the crank arm screw. This screw does not need to be removed. You can now remove the crank arm and the key. Replace the crank arm and install a new key. If the new key is very snug, make sure the notch in the crank arm is aligned with the notch in the crank axle and tap the key into place with the end of a tool or a soft hammer. Replace the crank axle screw. Replace and securely tighten the crank bolt. Replace the pedal leg and roller arm assembly. Make sure the axle is going straight through the arm to keep it from binding on the bearings or bushings. Reconnect the upper body arm and replace all the plastic covers.